collaborative journey, I would just like uh, give you all some background. So we started with the first call on the Compassionate Cities agenda in July this year, and we had some wonderful sharing done by Marilyn as she spoke about the history of Charter, the motivation behind Charter's work, how Compassionate Cities initiative has grown to over 400 cities across the world. We also heard from Arun about the first compassionate city in India, Pune, and the projects that were being undertaken under his leadership as part of Purna Pune. Um, Dr. Himani shared with us about the Compassionate Ghaziabad launch and how DLF School, under the leadership of Ms. Seema Jareth, had brought the alumni, students, teachers, principals of other schools, parents, local authorities on a common platform in the strive to make Ghaziabad a compassionate city. And another thing we spoke about was Compassionate Gurgaon launch, which actually happened on August 19th at the MDI campus. So with a lot happening under existing endeavors, there's surely an immense learning for us to take and to get inspired so as to spread this initiative in our respective cities and communities. Um, so I would like to now invite Namrata, Charter for Compassion India team lead, to briefly share the motivation for all of us to come on this platform, as well as introduce the participants. Namrata, over to you.
Thanks, Anjali. And I see Rakhi has joined as well. Hi, Rakhi. Hi, everyone. So glad to be on this call today. It wouldn't have been possible without everyone of us, I guess, playing their role. We've been having lots of discussions, like Anjali summarized so wonderfully, with different people at different points in time, and some wonderful projects have come up over time. And we thought it is high time for us to start pulling together all the work that has been done, and also find a way of engaging people like Sujita, like Abhilash, who are keen on starting off new projects in their cities. And it is with this purpose in mind that we have started this series of calls. This is our second call, and we hope to be able to provide this call recording as a resource for anybody who might want to refer to it. So I really appreciate everyone's making the time to be here today. What we wanted to do is, this is a proposal, so very open to any thoughts or comments anyone might have on if this works for our call today. We wanted to, invite Sandy to share with us a little bit about the history of compassionate cities, specifically from the point of view of how it has been in her experience with California. The state of California, and also then invite Arun to share about Purna Pune, to invite Himani to share about the Compassionate Ghaziabad project. And post this sharing, we were hoping to throw it open to Sujita, who I think has just dropped off the call for some reason, and also Abhilash, to see if there are any specific questions they might have. So just so everyone knows who all are on the call today, Sande Hart, our global lead for the Women and Girls team. We have Anjali, who is representing the Compassionate Education Program, the Compassionate Schools Network for India, and also looking at this particular initiative of getting us all together on calls. We have Arun, who's leading the Purna Pune program. Deepika is joined from Bangalore. She has been associated with the Charter for Compassion for a while and has been engaging in various projects as well. We have Rakhi, who's leading the education sector for India. And we have Himani, who's essentially been our go-to person and has been playing an instrumental role in getting the DLF public school project off the ground. We also have Abhilash, who's from Nepal, I guess, and he's keen on starting this particular project there. And we have Ankita, who's our latest member. In fact, we haven't had any call with her so far, and she's joining us I guess, are you already in Brazil, Ankita?
Yeah, right now I'm in Sao Paulo, Brazil only.
Okay, great. So
Mhm.
yeah, as you can see, we have a team that is growing, and
Hmm.
we're just very excited to go ahead with this. So does this broad agenda work for everyone? Any questions, comments? Are we good to go?
Okay.
Okay, I'll take that as very good to go, and glad to see Sujita is joining back too. So Sandy, should we say over to you, and would you be kind enough to please take us through a bit about Compassionate California and a bit of history about the Compassionate Cities agenda?
Thanks, Namrata, and good evening, everybody. It's really an honor to be here, and it's really inspiring to see this thriving network you have developed here. It's really quite inspiring. You're all of the highest caliber, and it's really beautiful to see the intention that's at work here. And I know there's so much more than I could see right here on the screen. Allow me to start by saying that I found the Charter for Compassion at an interfaith conference in 2008, or no, I beg your pardon, 2010 or 11, in which I was inspired to come home to my women's interfaith group and and suggest that we create a city of compassion or start the groundwork for a city of compassion because we were embedded in our community. We did have our finger on the pulse of all of the needs of the community as much as anyone could, any organization could. At that point, we were about 10 years into operations. So, and being community builders, we thought we'd be perfectly positioned to do so. And we sat down together. I called an emergency meeting. We sat down together, and oh gosh, within the first half hour, we were sold that this is something that we could and should do, but we couldn't agree to whose city we should go to first because we were spread out around our county, our region. And so it just came to us that why don't we just everybody go back to their respective corners, go back to their respective communities, and start the groundwork where they were. And if we could just do that all over California, we could literally have a state of compassion. Then the play on words came, state of compassion. How wonderful would it be to live in a state of compassion? And at the time, there was nothing more than there was nothing larger than a city or a village or a small unit of government that was, addressing this. So it was the first idea for anything larger than a city of compassion. And we just said yes. And we went to work on it. And we started, it's been a couple of years going from around different communities and showing up at different council meetings, meeting with different groups, presenting the theory and the philosophy and the modality and the methodology of a city of compassion. Yet again, back then, there wasn't even a good toolkit to look at. The concept of what would happen if we took, if we brought together the stakeholders of the community, those holding the safety net issues, and being first on the scene to actually show up, first responders, those raising funds for homelessness and so on, and Department of Education, and if we all came together in one room with our local government, with the mayor and the city council of that respective city, and if we started charting out what our common problems were and what our common solutions were, then that invited the conversation of what would collective impact look like. What would happen if those working on the environment were helping those working or aware of and or engaging in those working on healthcare, and that way all across the room. And however, the unique element in the room was not just seeing ourselves and our needs and our collective solutions, but how could compassion, when we when we apply the values and the words, literally, of the Charter for Compassion into all of that decision making, into all of that, and we constantly reminded ourselves, is compassion here? Is compassion at the table? Are we doing this and not forgetting about compassion, or is compassion very present in everything we're doing here? And that is what created a really solid foundation, and that's what made us unique from any other initiative that was working collectively. And that was, we had this bonding agent of the charter, but also we had a global network that we could tap into for models, for resources, for sharing our information and our resources, and just knowing we weren't alone. And I'll stop here by just saying that the bigger view of how we looked at what we were doing in California was more, not so much a network or a hierarchy, but more like if you imagine a constellation of stars, where the Charter for Compassion may be the sun, but all the planets are different cities, and every planet is going to rotate at its different axis, at its different speed. It's going to be different size, different color, different texture. It's going to have different needs and different solutions. But one thing we all are doing is sharing the same container, if you will, not an umbrella, but a container of how we are, how we exist in this work. And so let me just stop, take a sip of coffee, and then hear perhaps if you have any questions, and then I can share about the measurable impact and the not so measurable impact, if you'd like. Any questions, or have I been crystal clear, which I'm usually not, so Namrata will tell you. Well, you're making me feel very good about myself.
Yeah, specifically, I think Sujita and Abhilash and even Himani, I think this is a great opportunity to ask any questions you might have around, how to get started, or what are some of the ways in which one can measure the impact. I know that particular thing is a big one for the DLF public school as well, and that would certainly be something that would be useful, Sandy.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Namrata. I think I'm glad that you mentioned that. So that was the thing that came to my mind is, yes, I think definitely we are making an impact. Lots of things are happening. But Sandy, yes, we would want to know the concrete, tangible ways of knowing whether we are making an impact, how much of an impact are we making? Because not measurable impact right now is very visible. But would appreciate the ways in which we can make it a little more visible and measurable.
Well, thank you so much for that very difficult question to answer. There are a couple of enterprises that are working on platforms that will provide such measurement tools. However, it's a couple of things. Well, it really depends on how what your needs are. For example, if in Anjali, with the compassionate school, for example, are you seeing an improvement, a rise in grades, a rise in a reduction in truancy, a reduction in excuse me, problems, I'm sorry for loss of words, of problems that the children are causing? Are you seeing a rise in a kid showing up early because they really want to be at school because they feel safe and it's a compassionate place? That's an example of how you can look at some of those non-traditional ways of measuring impact, that there really isn't a scale for this. In a city also, over time, and it does take time, you can look at crime rates. You could look at, you can survey, do a simple survey. One thing that we did in one of our cities is we created a graph And unfortunately, I can't find that graph. I went looking everywhere for it. It was a simple graph, but very simple. And we basically asked the question to every one of the people that are organizations that were involved in our City of Compassion, such as the food bank, such as the ones working on youth homelessness and white supremacy, hunger, and so forth. And we went around to them each and we asked them, where are you right now in terms of from surviving to thriving? And it was just 4 columns. How would you mark yourself right now? Are you surviving? I can't remember what the middle 2 were. Are you, because it's been many, many, many years. Are you surviving? Are you basically making it? Are you, you're doing okay. You're not necessarily near the edge, but you're threatened. Oh, that was it, threatened, and improving, and then thriving. And so what we would do is we started with that survey, and surprisingly, not everybody was in the surviving mode. There were people sort of between 1, 2, and bordering 3, and and yet we'd survey them again in 3 to 4 months, and we saw a little bit of an improvement, not a lot, but an improvement. So I have to preface what I'm sharing with you is after a number of years, the women's interfaith group that I mentioned that was hosting this initiative, we realized that a women's interfaith group should not be at the center of this, that it really had to be shared leadership, horizontal leadership with a leadership team that didn't represent any one sector. And so we pulled it out of our organization. I went with it for about a year, and then I went and got more involved with the charter. So that's where I left it. So, but I had a good solid 5 years of developing a number of cities of compassion. So I just want to let you know that where it's at today, I can't say because I have not been so involved. Plus I moved out of California. So at any rate, but that was one of the measurements that we thought would be most impactful. So I hope that might answer your question. There really aren't any distinct measurement skills because a lot of these issues are soft issues. And what I mean by soft, it doesn't mean they're not painful and that people don't suffer. It means that there's no way to actually, each of them are real personalized issues. But again, it depends on what your issues are in your community.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sandy. I think that idea of actually surveying maybe post few more months of the community being engaged in these initiatives, we can survey, because I can definitely see the increase in the engagement. More and more senior students want to be engaged with these initiatives. So that is one very positive sign. And I think, so mental health is also being talked about a lot these days. Probably a survey of sorts after, we establish these initiatives, these projects a little more firmly in our community would be a very good way to measure the impact. Thank you so much. Thank you for your response.
Thank you. No, Hamani, that was really, you pointed out something really important, and that's another thing to measure is engagement. You're doing something right if more and more people want to engage. If you're seeing more and more things happening, if you're seeing more and more people communicating and working together. Is the food bank working better with the environmental, organizations and so forth? That's a really, and again, in numbers, sheer numbers, how many people are embracing this. But I will tell you some of the vulnerabilities, if I may, of a city of compassion or a region of compassion that I recommend paying close attention to. Actually, if there were any lessons learned from me, is that it really takes a committed, strong core to commit to sticking with it and having dedicated cheerleaders, if you will, or champions, if you will, to keep the energy going. One thing we were not prepared for was the enthusiasm was remarkable. Everybody was really excited about it. And that made it easier for us, obviously, because people were wanting to do it. It wasn't it didn't take much to convince people that this was a good idea. Yet, what happened when the person who was in charge of calling the meetings, making sure things were moving the way they should, when they moved away, or when they lost interest, or what have you. So, what are the safeguards you put in place, and how strong is your core to ensure that it can be sustainable and resilient? I'd have to say gosh, it's for me, it was a disappointment. One of our most active cities of compassion that was such a model. They still are a model. I can't discount what they did, but they the cheerleader, if you will. I call them the cheerleader, the champion, the one at the core, the one that was really inspired to start it and to keep it going and to organize everybody. It came from such passion. She moved to Hawaii. And there wasn't anybody that had that same passion in their heart. They were willing, they weren't the leader that she was. They were a really, really good follower, and you need an awful lot of good followers. Their followers are as valuable as the leaders. But it's really hard to find somebody that can do that and keep it up. Or we could have foreseen that and prepared for what happens when Peggy leaves. Who's next in place? The other thing is, because the charter would to be a city of compassion, the mayor and the city council must be involved, or the local government. And yet, like in any politics, there's a turnover over a certain amount of time. So what happens if the incoming politician doesn't like this, or there's some political issues or what have you? How are you agreeing to keep the fire lit? So I wanted to share with you these two vulnerabilities. So because they're not unsurmountable by any means. It's just good to manage expectations. We see way too many cities that aren't really as active as they were, or have just fizzled away. And that's what I don't work in place in those other cities as well. And that I feel responsible, not even knowing that myself, to forewarn when I was going around beating a drum, my compassion drum.
Thanks so much, Sandy, for sharing that. It's very valuable. Before we move on to Arun and learn more about the Purna Pune project, I just wanted to invite Abhilash, and I see Sujita is again dropped off the call, and Himani. If you have any specific questions you would like Arun to include in his talk when he speaks about Purna Pune, any particular things you have in mind as key projects, or any specific challenges that you may already be facing, or something that might be useful for you as we go along. So please do share anything you might want us to cover, and then we can move to Arun to share his presentation.
May I?
Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you so much for specifically inviting also, and there was this calling. So I was wondering before this call. I'm from Kathmandu, Nepal. So and I see that in cities, in towns and villages, they have their own cultural devices by means of which they express compassion. Has there been any experimentation where these cultures that people have had in their lives were included in whatever we did, towards building a city, a compassionate city, or a school, or communities? So I hope I'm clear. So what I'm asking is, there are already existing practices that people are engaged in that are conducive to making build a city into a compassionate space. Do we also work with such cultures? Do we incorporate them? And if we have done it, can we name some examples?
Yes, awesome. That's a wonderful question, and I think both Himani and Arun can speak to that as well. So we'll keep that as one of the questions to address, and definitely Sandy to please pitch in. Sujita, is there anything you may want to table as a question from your end before we move on to addressing these queries and Arun sharing more about Purna Pune? Any specific things you have in mind with regards to the agenda you're looking at taking on? Okay, Sujita is pinging saying she's in a cab now, so no worries, we'll keep going. So Arun, I will hand it over to you to address this question, and please, Himani,
Sure.
Sandy, you can pitch in. And,
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so thanks. So thank you, Sandy, for that sharing, and thank you, Anjali, Namrata, for making this call happen, and thanks everyone for your questions. So I'm going to just start off by telling you a little bit about the genesis of Purna Pune. How did it start? About 4 or 5 years back, and then show you a few slides and maybe a small presentation, and then share with you some things that we've learned, some do's, some don'ts, and then we'll take it from there. Yeah, I'm very happy to receive more questions, and Abhilash, I'll definitely respond to your question. So let me start by telling you a little bit about the genesis of Purna Pune, and I'm going to share my screen here. I think the whole idea of Purna Pune started by this thought that everything we need on the planet for a compassionate world is just, sustainable, spiritually fulfilling world is all there, but the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle don't come together. So we said, okay, but forget the world, let's start with a city, and that's how the idea of Purna Pune was born. The idea was that all the money we need, all the resources we need, all the people, the know-how, the knowledge, everything is there, but it is not woven together into some kind of tapestry. So that's how approximately 5 years back we initiated this movement. And Purna, by the way, means complete or whole. And we said, can a compassionate Pune be a whole compassionate Pune, where we are compassionate to ourselves? That is the first column in this one. Can we be compassionate to ourselves, taking care of ourselves? Can we be compassionate to other people? And can we also be compassionate to the environment and to other earthlings? So this is a model of compassion that has helped us a lot. Whenever we are doing an outreach or we are talking to people and explaining to them the benefits of compassion, this model has helped us a lot, and I'll be very happy to share it. Let me now share a little bit about the story. What are some of the things we've done so far, and then after that, I will tell you a few points and then take the questions. So here is. Can you see this screen, Compassionate Pune, or not yet? Do you see the story of Compassionate Pune?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. So I will just share it in a moment. Just 1 second. Yeah, just a moment. Share the screen and the story of Compassionate Pune. Okay, even if you don't hear any sound, it doesn't matter. Just look at the slides and then I'll share something more.
are you there?
Yeah, I'm there.
Okay, I would suggest maybe we can just keep talking because we are recording
Okay. Sure.
content.
Okay. So basically, we would like Pune to become a lighthouse for other cities. Purna is complete, whole, and these are some of the areas that these are some of the areas, project areas that we are focusing on. Can Pune be healthy? Can it be safe? Can it be thriving? Can it be literate, green, awake, and clean? Now, one of the things I would like to say here is that while this was a very ambitious thing, later on we learned that it's much better to focus. It's better to take maybe clean and healthy, or just one or two, instead of trying to do too much. So one of the learnings was that don't try to take on too much, start small, make a success of that, learn from that, and then expand it to other areas. The other learning is that, if we do not worry about who is going to take the credit, and I think Sandy, as you put it very beautifully, if you see a compassionate city as a container or a platform, then many people jump in. There's no problem at all. So I think the idea is not to see a compassionate city as an organization, but to think of it more as a holding platform or a holding container where compassion for everyone is really the key. Yeah, so we had a lot of organizations joining in and are still dancing together, as I say, to make a compassion. So these are some of the projects. The Annadata is a citizens movement for safe food, where people work with farmers in the vicinity of Pune to grow organic food and then bring that organic food into the different homes and colonies of Pune. Then Compassionate School Network, very strong network of compassionate schools has been set up, and there are huge synergies which I will explain later on. Then Awakeni is about awakening people to abundance, thriving, getting slum dwellers to make projects to earn livelihoods. And of course, the Climate Collective, where we're saying that by 2030, can we make Pune carbon neutral? So these are some of the projects. So this is the organic food thing, actually helping farmers grow organic food, bringing that to people in cities, developing the capacity of farmers for growing organic food. I think one of the most beautiful things that happened in Pune is that for the first time, principals of schools started collaborating. And I think that really was amazing, because they started sharing best practices. They started talking about what they're doing in the area of environment, what they're doing in the area of cleanliness. And I think that has spawned a huge ferment of learning, of ideas, and so on. Very satisfying. And later on, the schools in Compassionate Pune and Compassionate Karachi, the children started talking to each other, thanks to the Golden Rule project, which is coming up in a moment. Yeah, this is the one. So we had, Compassionate Pune and Compassionate Karachi in a school, three boys and three girls, and three boys and three girls on the other side, actually started talking to each other about compassion. What are we doing? What are some of the compassionate things we're doing? And they were amazed at how similar we all are. And then last year, this expanded to 3 schools. And just yesterday, I sent out a letter to people in Pakistan and our team here in India that can we expand this to 100 schools? Again, making compassion the central theme of the whole interaction. And the children discovered in Pune, they discovered that we have Karachi sweets in Pune, and the Karachi children said we have Delhi sweets and Bombay sweets in Karachi. And they said we are all the same. So really amazing. So can children write a new story? That is the whole thing. So that then sustainable livelihoods, about 40% of the population of Pune lives in slums. So out of compassion for ourselves, can we, and therefore to foster equality, can we support, empower, encourage, earn livelihoods through things like jewelry making, bag making, tailoring, and so on. So that has good experience. These are some of the things they made. And one of the things I just want to say is that, it is very important to find imaginal cells. And imaginal cells basically are the cells in a caterpillar that really go on later to make a butterfly. And like that in a city, as Sandy, you put it beautifully, there are always people were enthusiastic, they call them the fireflies or the imaginal cells. Can we get them together and start working with them? Because that is extremely important. So we train trainers and catalysts, and you see some of them, and then they in turn go and do the work instead of just a core group doing things. So that this is a very important thing. Develop capacity of catalysts and leaders who can then carry the work further. And a few things we're looking at now going further is, can we link the movement of a compassionate city to these sustainable development goals? Can we actually look at the indices, for example, for health, for education, indices that the United Nations has made for these sustainable development goals, and can we then link them to compassionate cities? So this is one thing we want to work on. Then I think I've spoken about this, getting the imaginal cells. This is a program we have called the iCatalyst program, which is the catalyst of inspiration, initiative, integration, and innovation, which develops the work further. So this is a very important element of our design. We started off trying to collaborate with a few US cities, but Ashland, Portland, Boulder, but somehow it didn't. I think again because of lack of interest of people or something, it didn't work out. There was a twinning between Compassionate Austin and Compassionate Pune are twinned up. So now we're trying to see, can we learn from Compassionate Austin, and can they learn from Compassionate Pune, and can we learn from each other? So this is something that's coming up. And again, these are some people in the US who are interested. I think the key, if you ask me, is that can people hold this thought in the mind that we are co-creating a new future? It is, if we work together, if we work with a lot of inspiration, if we get our hands wet and really move forward as a team, we can co-create a new future that works for all. I think this is a very the work of creating a compassionate city. I think it's about leadership, Sandy, as you said, pretty much about leadership. So this is a book that my father and I wrote, One Wholesome World, and it's got the formulas and tools to create a world that works for all. But I said, hang on, world is far away. Let's get Pune going first. And so many of the things we're doing are in this book. The templates, the models, and the tools. And I think I think the Charter for Compassion has been very, very amazing because I would like to particularly say Marilyn, Mimi, then Rami and Anjali. I think the whole foundation platform of the Charter for Compassion has been extremely valuable from the perspective of connecting us to people. Uh, the toolbox for example, there's a very beautiful toolbox of the for compassionate cities which is available, and I can share the link there. So that has been extremely important, and it helps us to come onto a common platform. Now, very quickly, I'll just share with you a few learnings, a few do's and don'ts. So one is quickly get the government, the mayor, the city council on board. Abhilasha and Himani and Sujit, whoever, get them on board, because this is one mistake we made in Pune is we did great work, but we didn't get the mayor and the others on board, the municipal council. And then when I asked Marilyn a few days back, I said, how come we are not listed? She said, because you don't have the government signatures. So that's my top priority task now. Second is uh, synergies. Yeah, I think what we found is when we were working with education, we suddenly found that a lot of good work around the environment started happening around that. When we started working with education, we found that synergies across borders began to happen. We also found that health and food, the Annadatta movement started integrating with the health movement. So you will find a lot of cross linkages and cross synergies happening. I've covered imaginal cells. The other thing is it takes all kinds of people to make a movement. It's not enough to have a visionary. It's not enough to have, some doers. You need a whole cross section of people, and therefore be careful to define who are the visionaries, who are the catalysts, who are the shepherds, who are the people who are the weavers and connectors. And again, I can send you a link on that, because uh, expecting just an architect to build a house is not good enough. Architect will give you a nice design, but you need masons and you need bricklayers. So build a team where consciously you're getting the right kind of people. Any other key learning? Yes, I think the other thing is when you try to outreach, there is a huge amount of material on the Charter for Compassionate Communities site. That is, when it comes to the cities, there's a huge amount of information which you can use. There's a toolbox there, toolkit there, and I think that is what I wanted to share. So I'm open to questions. Thanks, and I'm open to any questions if you have.
Thanks so much, Arun. I'm also looking at the time, and we did want to have Himani also share a bit about the DLF Public School. So
Okay.
maybe if we can, and we still need to address, what Abhilash had brought up. I think the DLF Public School may have a good example to share. So Himani, do you want to take a few minutes and maybe share, and we can keep a few minutes towards the end, perhaps around 5 minutes for any last questions or discussing the way ahead.
Yeah, sure, Namrata. So let me just share my screen. Um, just a second.
So while Himani is bringing that up, just wanted to mention Abhilash. I'm sure she'll cover that. One of the things that we really appreciate about what the DLF Public School has done is this whole concept of a nukkar natak or a street play. And that's something that's fairly popular in rural areas, and they have actually been able to bring it to their city project, and the school alumni also are engaged with the current students and the staff. So that's a great example of how you can include the local context into whatever work you're doing. So over to you, Himani.
Thank you, Namrata, and thank you for this opportunity to be able to share the story of Compassionate Ghaziabad. And thank you, Arun. I think there were some great takeaways for me, which I would be discussing later. So I would sort of narrate the story on behalf of DLF Public School. So we call ourselves a thinking school with a soul. And when I joined the school some 7 years back, there were already, very robust practices at the school that were already grounded in compassion. So that has been the very core of the school. One example that I would probably want to share with you would be the example of Ekta Park. So this is the park in the neighborhood that was practically a rejected space in the community, which was a dumping ground, as you can see in the picture on the left, that it was in fact sort of an area that was misused by some vicious elements in the community. And it's quite a good space, it's a big space. So school decided to take ownership of this park, and we redid the park, and today it is a space where the elderly and the children, they visit this, mornings, evenings, and there are swings, and there yoga happens there. And the school actually took the ownership, and we have our gardeners, our malis employed there to take care of the park. And also the community has now chipped in, and now the space is one of the the examples of how community, when takes an ownership of an area, how things can so drastically change. Well, these things have already been happening at the school. A lot of great practices that I can share. And then we found partners with a Charter for Compassion, and our vision resonated with them, and we started working together. And it all started with Rakhi coming in and conducting sessions with the children. And it was mind blowing. It was actually a lot of credit to Rakhi. So children started questioning as to what is self compassion. What does it actually mean to be compassionate? What is this idea of compassionate cities? And as you would be knowing, Ghaziabad is one city which is not really, it is one city, Sandy, for your reference, in India. It's a city that is notorious for various reasons. So children sort of, so we are, one value that I see being inculcated in children at the school is not to take things lying down, to be proactive agents of change. So Rakhi actually stimulated a lot of thinking, which was grounded in compassion, as you said. What does it mean to be compassionate? A lot of brainstorming happened around that. And then further to that, there was an alumni meet that happened in December 2018, and alumni joined in, and I think you can see a picture of Namrata facilitating a session with the alumni. And the alumni here proposed 5 projects that they thought could bring about a big change in the community. So these deliberations went on, and I'm focusing more on the process because, it all seemed very, very overwhelming in the beginning, that how a small school can, initiate change. But then it all, just one thing led to another. We kept, as Arun said, co-creating, conversing, communicating, and right things kept happening. So these deliberations led to the emerging of these 4 strands, 4 projects. One of them is Annadan, which is taking care of hunger in the city. Second one is water conservation. Our region, North India, is already, lacking in groundwater, and this is one of the major crises that is facing the region. So one initiative that alumni proposed was wait, stop, think before the drop shrinks. Isn't that a beautiful name? Yeah. And then another project that was proposed was Dhyanathon, which is raising the happiness quotient of our city through meditation. Fourth project was walkable Ghaziabad. So this city does not have streets on which, elderly, disabled, or kids can safely walk. There are a lot of issues. So one of the alumni who's actually currently pursuing architecture, she proposed a project called Walkable Ghaziabad. So these beautiful thoughts emerged out of those deliberations with Namrata, and all of us were a party to it. So after that, I think we organized. So we wanted to launch. We wanted to share these ideas with the community. So we got together for a very unique betak, as we call it. Marlin joined. Rakhi was there. Anjali was there, and all the influential community stakeholders were there. So parents were there, the residential housing societies heads were there, and then we deliberated. Some local politicians were there. So across the room, then Marilyn shared with us models of successful compassionate cities, and some solutions emerged from there. One of our projects, so as Arun said, one of the lessons is to start small and gradually build it. So one project that is going great is Happy Fridge. So this is under Annadan. So Namrata was instrumental in connecting us with Feeding India. And so we got this fridge, which is now, we call it food ATM. And it takes care of, people who are hungry and in need of the food in the vicinity of the school. And it's a responsibility of the community, the parents, the students, and the teachers as of now to keep the fridge full. But I think the good news is spreading, and a lot of people are benefiting from this. It is under the project Annadan. This was also launched by one of the alumni alumnus who's still very closely associated with the project. And then around the same time, Diwali, there was this slogan that was launched by Red FM, "Is Diwali no pet khali." So we invited the our RJ Rocky of Velapanthi fame to inaugurate our Happy Fridge. And you can see some pictures where children are actually donating the food packets. This was the inauguration day of the Happy Fridge. So this project is very heartening to see every morning when you visit school, to see how people are lined up outside, and we're taking care of hunger problem at a very small level. And the other projects also are being taken care of. So uh, then I think we were invited by MDI Gurgaon to share our model, our projects, and our principal, Ms. Seema Jairat, under whose leadership, this thing is striving, and slowly, it's becoming a collective, it's becoming a shared vision of our city. Lot of very influential people are already on board, and I don't really, as you said, Sandy, that this is a vulnerability that, the leadership or the ownership of things has to be shared and has to be collective. So I think to a certain extent we have been very successful in that. So she shared her model at MDI Gurugram, and I know now that Compassionate Gurugram is also it has also started. So I think this is all great, and we hope that this synergy ignite and keep this chain reaction going. A lot of great practices at the school. So we have empathy managers within the school. So I really liked what Arun said just a while back. He said, let children rewrite the story of these compassionate cities. And we have this very robust practice of goodwill piggy bank, where children acknowledge each other, acknowledge the school, acknowledge everybody around that. They learn to be grateful. And there are empathy managers within each class who are also keeping this compassionate Ghaziabad going. And every year we are creating stars of compassion, which Rakhi and Anjali would be guiding and creating. So the core keeps getting stronger and stronger to keep the compassionate Ghaziabad going. That is the story that I had to narrate. Thank you. That's it from
Thanks,
Compassion Abhilash.
thanks, thanks so much, Himani. It's so inspiring, and just Miss Seema Jairath herself has been such a beacon of light and hope for taking this ahead. I could not imagine, just one conversation would trigger so many events and happenings, and really, the DLF Public School is our star school in the Compassionate School Network. So, really appreciate your making the time to be here today. I know we're running short of time and we do need to close in a few minutes. So just want to maybe invite those who have not had the chance to speak yet, specifically, I guess Abhilash and anyone else who may have any questions or any thoughts on how you think we can keep this dialogue going. What would be most valuable for you as we move forward, and anything else that you would like us to make available for your benefit.
Namrata, may I just respond quickly to Abhilash's question?
Yes, please do.
Yeah, because so Abhilash, you had said that how do you weave the local cultures in? So the answer is what we are doing in Pune is we have actually looked at what are the strengths of different people. Like, for example, the tribal women around Pune traditionally have grown millets. So as part of the Annadata movement, we invited them into the city. They held millet exhibitions. People started learning about millets. And so their indigenous culture, local culture, started integrating with the movements of the compassionate city. Yeah, so you just have to look out for what are the bright sparks, do an appreciative inquiry into various things, and then see how they connect with some of your projects. So it's eminently possible.
May I respond as well? I'm sorry, Namrata, I know you're short of time here, but this is kind of hits a nerve with me because as an interfaith and multicultural activist for the last 20 years, I couldn't think of anything more important than this question right now in time, especially. And if we go back to the ideal that a compassionate city, as Arun said, is one that works for everyone. We can't exclude those with that are diverse in culture or the marginalized, especially. And one of the ways we address that is by giving opportunities and providing opportunities to celebrate our unique diversity. How can we invite different cultures to show up and demonstrate through ritual, through dance, through values, through what expressions, panel discussions, what have you, just to invite their voice to be heard and seen, and their culture to be seen in your work. And that's all. I wanted to thank you for that question.
Thank you, Sandy. Anything you'd like to add or ask Abhilash before we head towards next steps and wrap up? All right, great. So Abhilash says he's good. That's fantastic. So any thoughts from Arun, you, Sandy, Himani, and anyone else on the call on what may be some of the ways in which we can ensure that we are continuing to add value to those who may want to start these dialogues, and how do we also start including some of our international audience from Compassionate Cities Network to be part of these conversations and enrich each other's initiatives.
So I like to
Go in first, or no, sorry, Raki, whoever, yeah.
okay, a small suggestion. Our country itself is a world in its own. So it's a thought that came into my mind when I was hearing Arun sharing about the schools exchange between Pune and Karachi. How about having some kind of exchange between DLF Public School and any school in Pune? So there'll be a lot of exchange of ideas, a lot of inspiration, and then a lot of things can happen. I somehow feel that that would be very great, and the schools will feel supported by doing this.
Sure. Yeah, wonderful idea, Raki. And I would say that Also, the link of education to interfaith dialogue in India would also throw up a lot of very rich possibilities. Because India has all the faiths, and I think if, say, for example, Muslim children in Assam could talk to children in Pune or in Kashmir or something, I think we would have a very, very, and of course, keeping compassion as the theme and good cities as the theme, that would be an integrating platform. So I think we should just expand this conversation.
Yeah, just
Yes,
to add,
that's a
sorry.
very welcome. I'm so sorry. So yeah, that's a very welcome idea, Raki, and it definitely does make a lot of difference because the school, the DLF Public School, is already, we are involved with a lot of video conferences across the world, wherein children discuss all sorts of things. Very uncomfortable dialogues also happen. So already there has been a dialogue a number of times with the students in Pakistan, specifically in Lahore and Karachi, and children have been discussing, the different opinions and the conflicts and how to constructively handle the conflicts. And hopefully the new generation would handle this ever going conflict in much better way that our generation and the previous generations have handled. It looks like that
So,
when they talk. So we have to encourage, and I think that's a very, very constructive suggestion. So let's make that happen. A lot of cultural exchange already happening at DLF Public School. So we would be glad
so yeah, Himani, I'd love to connect with you offline on this because we are taking this whole thing forward. So I'd love to learn more. Thank you.
absolutely, absolutely.
Just to add on that, Arun, so you had mentioned a lot of references and links um, while you were sharing the Pune Pune initiatives. I would just request to share those so that we can share it across the group and the compassionate toolbox specifically. That will definitely help the new initiatives which are just going to bloom and new people who are planning to take this initiative in
Certainly.
their city. Yeah. Thank you, Arun.
Certainly. What thanks. I'll do that. I'll do that definitely. And Marilyn, hearty welcome. Lovely to see you here.
Nice seeing
Hello,
you.
Marilyn.
Okay.
Hi,
Hello.
Madeline.
Wonderful,
So,
wonderful.
yeah, Marilyn, sorry, we are just wrapping up the call. I don't know, there was a hiccup with
Really?
the time. Yeah, really sorry about that. I thought
Oh my
we
gosh.
had sent a calendar invites, and I know with the time difference, it might
Well,
have.
I was just on with India UNESCO, and I just got off that meeting saying I have to go because I have the other.
Well, we are really happy to see you here, and
Well, thank
luckily
you.
we've
Yeah,
been able to record this call, and we do hope to, continue the dialogue. But since you're here, we'd love to hear from you. Anything you'd like to share before we close in terms of our compassionate cities agenda and how we can continue to take this forward?
Well, part of in the conversation with UNESCO, as you know, located in Delhi, but their charge is really not only India, it's developing world. But nonetheless, we have been talking about a new platform for CIT, and which my guess will be ready early in the new year. And the idea is to try and get different universities, for example, like Jindal, where we were when I was there in August, and Rocky in particular, going to try and see if we can approach Soil to see if they would like to be a part of offering CIT. And this is going to be a self-directed learning approach. So it's not going to be face-to-face because UNESCO is really very anxious to scale this to tens of thousands of people. So that, that's the charge. So any ideas that you have, and it doesn't have to be only at the university level, it could be, for schools itself. Of course, the model of training people face to face is still going to be there. There's still going to be the opportunity to take the course through the charter, but this self-directed learning is going to be a whole new aspect, and just went through the first couple skill models, and there's going to be lots of recordings and that need to be made, but I think the guess is probably early next year it'll be available.
What is CIT, Marilyn?
It's the compassion and integrity training that you've already taken, Arun.
Okay. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Melon, I'll get in touch with you regarding soil to
Yes.
your inputs, and then connect with soil.
Anil.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah.
All right. So Anjali, anything else before we wrap up on the agenda? Are we good?
No. Yeah,
All
we're
right.
good, Namrata. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone,
Thanks,
for making
everyone.
time
Thank you.
for being here. We'll be circulating the
Thank you.
minutes, and we hope to continue this dialogue and have more people join in.
Yeah, thanks. And Namrata, I'll send you the links in a minute. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
bye.
you so
Okay.
much.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.